Okay, this is how we assemble our flies that we use for striped marlin, and I got it all laid out here on the table so we can see it fairly easy. I'm going to go ahead and show you what's been working for me for a lot of years. The flies are tied on I use a copper tube. Actually, here's another one. This one's just a little bit smaller diameter, but that's basically what I use for the tube. It's non-corrosive, wears well, doesn't smash. I tried to do them with plastic and I tried to do them with aluminum previously. The aluminum pinched and you couldn't get the fly apart, and the plastic eventually just fell apart. So being as I'm an old plumber, I went back to the old basics of pipe, and this works very well. So that's going to be incorporated into this fly. But to begin with, this is the first part of the fly's assembly. What it is, it's a big popper head. You can see it's got some big eyes glued into it, and just sprayed it to get a fairly good look on the fly and keep it all about the same coloration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to thread this through and take this head of this fly and just kind of put it out of the way for a minute. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take one of the tube flies. I'm going to assemble that onto the leader, and looking for the leader here coming out the back somewhere. Okay, there's the leader. So that tube flies on, and here's the other tube fly that's going to go with it, because I'm going to put two on this particular fly. A lot of times I use two. Sometimes I might use a different variety of colors. This may be all purple, and this one might be all blue, or this one might be all white, and this one might be all blue. Whatever you feel like is the way you want to fish it. So okay, so I'm going to get both the tube flies out of the way, and what you need to do at this point is you need to check and see where that back tube is on your fly assembly. Okay, that back tube ends about right where my finger is. Okay, but I don't want the hook right there. I want the hook back in this part of the fly. So I'm going to go ahead and I already pulled out a spacer that'll work with this setup, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this spacer on. We'll slide that spacer on. Okay, now the spacer's on there. Now the next thing that's going to happen is we're going to tie an 8/0 Gamakatsu saltwater hook on here. Very, very sharp hook. And if you look at the fly closely, you'll notice that the hook tip is offset from the hook shank. Very, very valuable on this fly. And a lot of saltwater flies I use have an offset hook. The reason why is because when the fish comes to the fly and he takes the fly and the hook goes into the fish's mouth, what can happen here is if the tip is directly over top of the hook shank and he just kind of gets it that way, if it's straight, it can do that. It can slide away. But if he gets a good grab on this hook, you'll see the hook goes right into my fingertip. Same thing happens with the fish's mouth. Only with the fish's mouth, it just keeps penetrating. The harder he pulls, the further it penetrates. Now you got the hook, a sharp tip hook, with a small barb in it, but it's buried into the fish, and usually that's when the fight begins. And hopefully you got a good purchase on the hook in the fish's fleshy part of his mouth, and at that point you're going to fight the fish. So you got the hook in there, and the fly's done its job. Okay, but let's show you how we hook this guy up to the bite leader. This bite leader is 80 pound fluorocarbon. I like to use a knot, and I have been using this knot for years. It's called a non-slip mono loop. And here's how you tie this knot. You basically take the end of your leader and you put an overhand knot in it, and I'm going to refer to the end of the leader as the tag end. We'll pull the tag end through the loop and create a loop about that big. That's probably pretty good right there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the tag end and I'm going to put it through the hook's loop or eyelet. And at that point in time, I'm going to tighten up my loop just a little bit more because I want the loop fairly small. I'm going to run this loop right back through. But if you take a good look at it, you're going to notice that loop goes into the knot body the same way as the original line exited the knot body. Okay, very important. This knot has to be assembled correctly. So at this point, I'm going to run the loop down kind of close to the fly, or the hook, excuse me. And at that point, I have a tag end sticking out. What I'm going to do with the tag end is I'm going to twist it around the running leader. I'm going to go around one time and two times. And it's pretty darn stiff line. So you got to kind of manhandle it. And at this point, I'm going to run that back up through that loop. Just like that. It's coming through the loop. And I'm also going to put my fingers on the loop so it doesn't go away. And as I said for years, this is what the dentist hates. But I grab it and I snug the knot, or start it. Like that. Okay, now the knot is just about completely assembled. It hasn't been cinched yet, but you can see that the last part of the tag is going through the knot body. And if you'll notice, it's also going right through the center of the loop of the knot. If it's not doing that, you didn't tie the knot correctly. So don't take a chance, cut it and retie it. These fish, there's no room for error with these big saltwater fish. So it's ready to be assembled. So get something that you can grab a hold of it with. I usually grab my hemostat or something on the boat or whatever, or put this over something and grab it and really watch this knot cinch it up. There, now the knot's cinched nice. Okay, let me get this off here, get my cutters. I'll cut this away. And what I do is I always leave a little bit of a tag. It's just old school, but I just like to leave a little bit of a tag. The reason I was taught this, the reason is sometimes monofilament has the ability to absorb water. If the tag end of a knot is cut really close to the knot's body and the monofilament absorbs a certain amount of water, and the monofilament can get a little softer and a little slicker, if you have the tag end of the knot cut against the knot body and it pops itself inside of one of those securing loops, it's going to unroll and your fish is going to swim away with the hook, and this is what you get with a big pigtail. So always make sure that you leave a tag in, make sure that baby is nice and secure. Okay, at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the fly together. I'm going to slide the spacer back. Here's the spacer. Spacer's going to be right up against the knot. There's the spacer, and the spacer's going to be just like that. And then the two tube flies, they're next. They come down and they're going to hit the spacer. So now what we got, and let's bring the head down. Go ahead and put the whole thing right here, right together. Okay, what we're looking at right here, and I usually leave, when I make the heads, I usually open one end up that the tube fly is actually going to fit in it like that. So it makes a nice secure fly. It looks good, it's streamlined. The tube stays nice and tight, so the fly, this fly looks good in the water. Okay. Let's look at where the hook is. Here's where the hook is. If you can see, he's pretty darn close to the back of the fly. I found that using this setup, with assembling them this way and using a nice large hook, but only one, versus using a double hook setup where you would not only have this hook, but you would have a hook up here behind the popper's head. In all the times that I've fished with a double fly hook up, I've never caught a fish on the front fly. I've caught them all on the back fly. So in order to make the process much easier for me when I'm making my flies or regrouping and tying on something different, I don't have to mess with that primary hook, and I go straight to the rear and use that. And this has really worked well. 15 years I've been catching striped marlin, and this really works. This is a nice setup. It's right at the back, but that fish is basically coming in either from behind or on a 40-degree angle, and he's eating the fly. He eats the fly like that, and bingo, oops, got the hook stuck in my hand, just like the marlin's lip. That's the way it works. Okay, we're almost done. I'm going to just explain a little bit as we did kind of in the leader section, but I'm going to just kind of reiterate a little bit. What you need to do to make this really work well, and this is just a little, I call it a little bit of an insurance policy on the assembly, is go ahead and bring your nail knot tool into play. And I've already snipped off a little piece of monofilament. This is actually the same size as the leader. It's 80 pound. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my 80 and I'm going to run it through my nail knot tool tray. And then I'm also going to take the piece of 80 pound that I've got to fasten it to the running line. And I'll show you what we're going to do here. So we're going to go through, make a nail knot 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. I'm coming back toward my hand. 4 times. The knot is just about ready to be assembled. And at that point, you take the tag end that you got sticking out and you run it back through the tray and underneath the looped section of mono that you just ran back. At this point in time, hold your thumb tight on the running line and the tag end of your nail knotted piece of mono and pop it off just like that. Okay, there's what you're going to end up first. It's not going to be very tight, so a good way to do that is you can just grab both tag ends again and snug it. But what I like to do is I'll grab my hemostat and maybe grab it and lock that on. The hemostat's got a locking device. And then take a pair of pliers, grab it, and now watch it. Oops, there it goes, popped off. Lost my grip. There. At that point, now the nail knot is nail knotted pretty firm to your leader. Okay, I come in and I take the front tag. I'm going to clip that fairly flush to the knot. Leave a little tag end on. Now this part, I can do this a little bit different. The knot's about 1 inch away from the popper head, or you can make it up here. And what I'd like to do is I like to cut this one about like that. Then when I come down to the fly, I'm going to slide the fly kind of over it. And I'm going to grab this knot and I'm going to slide that knot down to the popper. So when you're done, that's what it should look like. Okay, why is this knot on here? What benefit does it have? It has a huge benefit out on the water, and I'm gonna tell you some of my experiences. I've seen it more than once, and that's what promoted me to start doing this to my marlin flies. If the fish is hooked, you got a fish hooked, and you have the tube fly set up like this, like we got, and we got the popper head going here. What happens is when the fish is hooked and the hook is in that fish's mouth and he is running away from you, the only thing that's really attached is the hook, but the fly isn't in his mouth. He's not holding this. He's only got this in his mouth. Okay? So this slides down all the way down your leader, and we're going to be running maybe 3 to 4 feet, and this all slides away, and the fish is out there 80 yards, and all of a sudden the fish pops off. You go, oh darn, I lost him. Well, if you don't have this nail knot on here to keep this fly all intact as it is, and the fly and the popper head slide to the connection up at the Albright knot, and the fish turns back and he decides he's going to eat the fly again, which very, very often they decide they haven't had enough and they want to bite it again. Well, if he comes back and he takes the fly and the hook's 4 feet away, you're not going to get a hookup. The fish is just going to let go of the thing and swim off, and then you get to drop your teasers in the water and go look for another marlin. So, if you got that knot on there and that fly is all together and the hook is riding right there on the back where you want it and he eats it, your chances of catching the fish are pretty darn good, and hopefully you'll get the hook in the nice meaty part of the marlin's mouth, and it'll be fish on and marlin to the boat. Good luck. This is a good way to do it.